The time for silence is over. There was once an unprecedented time in American history when common citizens of their day began to define the rights of man and documented how those rights were being violated by their current government. They wrote to each other. They debated with each other. Ultimately, it was these common citizens who recorded these rights for all eternity, and furthermore created a new and free nation founded on these rights with liberty and justice for all of its citizens. Times have changed, but these rights remain.
I don't take responsibility.
That all citizens have the right to life. That all citizens have the right to pursue happiness. That all citizens are created equal. That all citizens have the right to a public trial. That all citizens have the right to peacefully assemble. That all citizens have the right to petition their government. What happens when you try to exercise these rights today? Is this government honoring your rights? Or are they violating them? Is this the government that those citizens aspired to? There is a solution.
I don't take responsibility. I don't take responsibility. I don't take responsibility.
Join me every Sunday afternoon for a new show where common citizens, you and I together, discuss with each other issues of today, where we demand proof and evidence is required, where we seek the truth and will not be silent. Join me this coming Sunday afternoon and take part in America's oldest and most honored tradition. Hello and welcome to episode 2 of The Left Speaks, where I take calls live, unedited, from conservative callers. All callers are welcome, however, conservatives get priority. We will open discussion on anything that was covered the prior week or anything that is open or anything that we are covering today. Last week, we primarily focused on coronavirus. And obviously, we're going to touch on that again since it's still going on, but I don't want this to be the coronavirus show. So this week, we'll be speaking about coronavirus, specifically how Republicans and Trump are handling it. We'll also be open to discussion on Black Lives Matter and any protests or riots, if you want to use those labels, the damage they've caused or lack thereof. And then finally, we'll touch on Justice Ginsburg, who recently passed. Obviously, the last one was unexpected, but trust to conservatives, specifically Republicans, to try and take advantage of it. My biggest question regarding the Supreme Court vacancy due to her death is why the rules have changed. And really, that's one of my biggest complaints with understanding where conservatives are coming from. You would think that just like any game or any system or any organization, that both sides would agree on a set of rules when they decide to play the game. You can take football. You don't get to change 10 yards is a first down midway through or at halftime. You don't get to decide after half that 10 yards used to be a first down. That's the way we used to play the game. However, that doesn't benefit me right now. So now it's going to be 12 or 13 or 6 or really just whatever benefits me and my side. I mean, if you're going to play only to win, then you need to expect both sides to start doing that. So when the Supreme Court had a vacancy under President Obama, and Mitch McConnell said, no, we're not going to fill this because the American people need to have a chance to weigh in on this. I disagreed with it at the time because that's not the way we had done things before. The rules were being changed. Now that the same Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, doesn't benefit by the rules that he set into place, he wants to change them again. Much closer to the election, since Justice Scalia had passed in February, and we're now in September when Justice Ginsburg passes, but the same rules don't need to apply now. The American people don't need to have any say-so. So don't take my word for it. Let's go straight to what Mitch had to say.
So here's our view. Instead of spending more time debating an issue where we can't agree, let's keep working to address the issues where we can. We just passed critical bipartisan legislation to help address the heroin and prescription opioid crisis in our country. Let's build on that success. Let's keep working together to get our economy moving again and make our country safer, rather than endlessly debating an issue where we don't agree. As we continue working on issues like these, the American people are perfectly capable of having their say on this issue. So let's give them a voice. Let's let the American people decide. The Senate will appropriately revisit the matter when it considers the qualifications of the nominee the next president nominates, whoever that might be.
That was 4 years ago. Now, today, with much less time before the election, let's see what the prominent Republicans, including Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, have to say.
If you're asking me a hypothetical about whether this Republican Senate would confirm a member of the Supreme Court to a vacancy that created this year.
Before November.
Yeah, we would fill it.
Well, if a vacancy did occur, and I don't expect one too, I hope everybody has a long, healthy 2020 on the court, you would see an effort by Republicans, I'm sure, to fill the vacancy.
If President Trump is defeated, if Republicans lose control of the Senate, would you still support doing this prior to January?
I would support going ahead with any hearings that we might have, and if it comes to an appointment prior to the end of the year, I would be supportive of that. We would need to have some very serious discussion about that, but again, it is, even though it's a lame duck session, it is still a Republican president and still a Republican Senate.
We are one vote away from losing our fundamental constitutional liberties. And I believe that the president should next week nominate a successor to the court. And I think it is critical that the Senate takes up and confirms that successor before Election Day.
What happened to the American people having a say? What happened to this is too close to the election and the American people deserve to have their voice heard for this Supreme Court nomination? Like I said, I disagreed with that logic 4 years ago. The American people had already voted. They had elected Obama. They had elected that Senate. Let's go. But if you're going to make that argument and support that argument 4 years ago, when President Obama was going to nominate somebody to the Supreme Court, I'm really interested in what logic you're using besides go team to justify the change now. When we're 4.5 months closer to a presidential election and Senate elections and House elections than we were 4 years ago. If you can explain this, or if you have some input on it, feel free to call in. In the meantime, we'll check the phone lines. It looks like we have Robert from Arizona. Give me just a minute, Robert, and we'll get you on the air. Robert from Arizona, can you hear me? Robert from Arizona, you're live on the air.
I'm here. Hello.
Oh, there you are. What did you want to discuss?
Well, actually, what you're talking about hits what I wanted to discuss on the nail, on the head of the nail, and that is the moral compass that's running elections and the political playing field. If they can say what they said back in 2016 about, hey, we want to wait till we know who actually is in office and get the people's input, which they never did, then where's their moral compass 4 years later? That they can just, it's a means to an end. And what I had originally been thinking about was back in 1960, my mother voted for Richard Nixon. And I asked her why. And at the time, she thought he was a better man, better for the country, appealed to the middle class, wasn't the handsomest guy in the world, had a political career, did his checker speech, and he was running against Kennedy, who was slick and $1,000 suit, very handsome, very progressive, plenty of money. And some people voted for Kennedy, and he won because he was progressive and a new face and everything. And some people voted for Nixon, not knowing what he would become. But the point is there was a moral compass that people looked at, why they thought maybe one person was better for the country than another. And I can't fathom, if anybody has a moral compass anymore, that comparing Biden to Trump and look at these two different people. The election isn't just about the party. It's about the overall good for our whole country. And everything we know about Trump now, how can all of these Democrats be so damn in love with him in spite of what they know versus what they know about Joe Biden? I don't get it. Anybody's opinion, anybody's feedback would be welcome.
I tend to agree with you. I mean, personally, I think it's just party loyalty has become more important than it ever has been. I mean, you're absolutely correct. If you go back to the debate between Kennedy and Nixon, the people who listened on the radio thought that Nixon won, according to polling data, and the people that watched on the television thought that Kennedy won. So obviously looks and demeanor and, physical appearance played a certain amount of role in how that election went. But I'm not going to fault anybody, whether they were too busy working or, if you voted for Trump the first time around because you thought the country needed a change. Obviously, I disagreed at the time, and I think that if you looked into it enough, you would have realized that he wasn't the change that the country needed. However, Now, when, we're approaching 200,000 Americans that are dead or dying, the whole Russia scandal and the investigation into that, the flip-flop on the logic about the Supreme Court. I mean, it just seems to me like I just want my team to win. I don't see how this is any different than if my football team, was playing your football team. I might not like my quarterback, but he's my guy, and I get to complain about him, but I still want him to beat you on Sunday. And to me, that's all it's
Right.
looking like. It's not about what's good for the country anymore. It's just go team.
And exactly, you're making a great point, which is if it's just about vote your party, then the only thing the elections need to be about is getting out the vote. It no longer matters who's representing your party. You're Republican, you vote Republican. We don't need to spend hundreds of millions, billions of dollars on advertising Martha McSally versus Mark Kelly in Arizona, or people in every other state, and Trump versus Biden, if all it is about the party. Because then it's just a means to an end, and our moral integrity is in the fucking toilet. Use my language.
Oh, no,
Because
you're fine.
Nobody looks at anything beyond. Nobody's looking at anything beyond that party loyalty. It's just a means to an end. And we've seen it under every Republican administration.
No, I tend to agree with you. And I mean, if you look back when Trump was running for president the first time around, at all the prominent Republicans in the party who came out specifically against him because of, what they were afraid and the direction he'd lead the country. I mean, Ted Cruz came out against him. Lindsey Graham came out against him. The Bush family came out against him. And then come election day, when it was time for their team to go against the other team, they all fell in line. It doesn't seem to matter it doesn't seem to matter what you say as a Republican, as long as you've got that R next to your name. And Trump figured out how to motivate the base of the Republican Party. He really did, which is why he won the primary. And the primary in both parties tend to be more extreme because you've got the more motivated people to show up. So extreme right or extreme left. And they pushed the party in that direction. And he definitely spoke to a lot of people on the extreme right.
But how do you justify all that? How do you, after you say everything that I've said, you said, and the people for the party, how do you justify that there are so many millions of people out there, liberal Republicans, conservative Democrats going on the other extremes, who can go to sleep at night and say, well, it was just it didn't matter to me what our guy does to the country, or this congressperson, or this the person who's a QAnon supporter in whatever state that is. And it doesn't matter. And that is really troubling. I can't get over the fact that it isn't disturbing to everybody that they're just throwing their vote in without any consideration of what they already know that's right on the surface as far as people, personalities, and what do you want for your country? What do you want for your kids, the grandkids? And nobody looks further than, no, it's just this election, screw 'em. And that is, we may be called the wimps if you're a Democrat, but that is the difference. We keep looking for some way to get a partisan agreement on any one of a number of dozens of issues, immigration and economy and taxes, et cetera, and we got nothing on the other side to work with. The other side is just, nope, it's just a no. God, that's interesting, but no. It's boggling.
No, I agree. I mean, one of two things, in my opinion, has to happen. And I don't think the first one's an option. Either the Republicans have to start honestly engaging in some kind of bipartisanship where both sides work together and we actually meet in the middle, or, and like I said, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, or the Democrats have got to start playing hardball. I mean, it's simple game theory. If one side never compromises and the other side always does, the side that never compromises is going to continue to win over the length of the game. In this case, as long as we keep having an American democracy. you can't.
You mean the
keep
meek will not inherit the earth?
Yeah, exactly. You can't keep asking the other side to play by the rules. At some point, you have to quit playing by them yourself. Otherwise, the side that's not playing by rules never gets any punishment, and they'll just keep breaking the rules if it always benefits them. I mean, if you look at the last 4 years of Obama's term in office, it was the most obstructionist, Congress we've had since like the Civil War or prior Civil War. And what did they do immediately when they got, a Democrat House? Oh, this is going to be the most obstructionist House you've ever seen. And then the Democrats run away from that. Well, the result is that those of us on the left never get any of the policies that we want, so they quit showing up to vote. And those on the right, at least, even if it's, stuff that we wouldn't think we would want, somebody on the right side wants it. So they keep getting what they want, so they at least show up to vote, and that's a big problem. You can't always compromise. I mean, Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, it's the Republican plan. It's literally the plan that Romney put into place in Massachusetts. That's not what anybody on the left wanted, and the Republicans still aren't happy. So why did we compromise in the first place? That's my question.
Well, I get a little concerned with all the divisiveness that's going on, and wonder, okay, so Joe Biden wins, and are we going to see a crisis that amounts to something as intense as our crisis over states' rights back in 1850 into 60 and 70, the Civil War, because there are enough idiots on one side of the fence that say, but I want it my way? It's a horrible thought, and we would probably, the first thing is nobody think about that. But are we looking at some sort of intense civil unrest between the either the haves and the has-nots, or the crazies and the sane people? I can't go on anymore. It's just too crazy to contemplate.
Well, I think that I don't think we're to that extreme yet, but I do think that the beginnings of that problem are there. And I think it boils back down to the same basic problem. If you go back to the pre-Civil War era, it's when newspapers started getting big, and like there were tons of them, right? So you could literally, look at the Democratic paper for your city, and then you could look at the Democratic paper for the state of Virginia, and then you could look at the Republican paper for the state of Virginia, and they would never present the other side. It was just it was you pick your source of propaganda is what you were looking at. And then once the news media started conglomerating, and there were, fairness standards, and the fairness doctrine was in effect, and, everybody was going to the, one of 3 or 4 media sources. Everybody was basing their decisions off the same information. Well, we're back closer to pre-Civil War, where everybody can go any direction they want and, find their little bubble and live in it and never have to engage with the other side. And that's kind of, what drove me to try and create this show and see if it gets any traction, is we need to get out of these bubbles that we've created for ourselves. We need to at least be able to have a discussion with the other side. We need to at least be able to say, hey, this is what I think. Why are you thinking differently? And have some kind of compromise. If neither side is starting with what they actually believe, or they're not willing to even talk to the other side, then bipartisanship is impossible, and you can't compromise if you can't even talk to the other side.
It'll be an ugly another 4 years.
No, I agree. And I think we're going to see a lot of division regardless of who wins this election. And it's unfortunate, but I do think that's true.
Yeah,
I'm scared if we get another.
I was just saying that a lot of people forget that back in the 1800s until whenever, the Republicans were the Democrats. Lincoln was a Republican. That was the party of progressiveness.
Well, and that's why I try to stick with, unless I'm referring to current day events, I try to stick to conservative and liberal, because I do agree it makes things a whole lot easier, because nobody's going to describe Lincoln as a conservative for his day and age. And if they do, I'd be happy to point out why they're wrong.
Well, Chris, thanks for letting me call up to your show. I really appreciate being able to vent. I wish our moral compass for this whole country would get a little bit more centered. But I will tell you that in all of our history, we tend to always knee jerk one way or the other, and over time we usually come back to some sort of middle ground. I just don't know when we're going to get back to the middle ground.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I do think it needs to be sooner rather than later, because we're knee jerking pretty far to the right now. But thank you for calling in. I appreciate your call, and you are more than welcome to call back anytime.
Well, I love your show. Thanks so much, Chris.
Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And that was Robert from Arizona, concerned about the moral compass of this country, which I tend to agree with. Again, as we were touching on with Justice Ginsburg, I don't see how you can, pretend to have a moral compass and at the same time make both of those arguments in good faith. That, hey, the American people deserve a say in this because this justice died in February and the election is, in November. So it's too close. So we shouldn't, go ahead and move forward with nominating a Supreme Court justice. And then 4 years later say, hey, this justice died in September, months later. Okay. And the election's still in November. But the American people already had their say. They don't deserve a say-so this time around. Let's just jam it in. Can we at least agree on the rules? Can we establish some rules and stick to them? So we're all playing by the same playbook. Because if you want to keep changing the rules, speaking directly to conservatives here, if you want to keep changing the rules, then if Biden gets elected and he ends up with a majority blue Senate or a majority blue Senate and House, what's to stop him from just saying, instead of having 9 Supreme Court justices now, we're going to have 15. And I'm going to appoint the other ones. Because that's a rule we all agreed on. And you would not be happy if that happened. And understandably so. But if you're going to change the rules on us, why shouldn't we change the rules back? And then every 4 years when we get a new president, the Supreme Court can just keep growing and growing and growing. And eventually we'll have, 435 members and, we'll just run out of time. Again, let's find a set of rules that we can all agree to and stick with them. And if you're advocating for one set of rules and you want to play by those rules, then at least stick to it and keep playing by those set of rules. I don't get to change at halftime that it's 10 yards to a first down because it benefits me. All right, folks, we're going to take a short break. We'll come right back after this and look forward to speaking with you then. And welcome back, everybody. We're going to play a short tribute to Justice Ginsburg. Then we'll check the line for any callers and touch on Black Lives Matter and the supposed riots. Regardless of whether you agree with her politics or not, she was an incredible and amazing woman with the things she accomplished. Distinguished law career, even before she joined the Supreme Court. Served as general counsel for the ACLU. Took multiple, 6 I believe it was, cases to the Supreme Court and ended up winning 5 of them, all in favor of women's rights and equal protection under the law. Served 27 years on the United States Supreme Court and was the second woman to ever do so. Like I said, you can disagree with her politics, but let's just at least take a moment to recognize her accomplishments, to appreciate her service to this country, and remember her life. A loss of a great American. Now, to go into some common talking points I've heard over Black Lives Matter, nobody seems to disagree that Americans have a right to protest. The argument that seems to be made by those on the conservative right is that these aren't peaceful protests, that they're all rioters and looters, and there's millions and billions of dollars worth of damage. And they simply, that right to protest in this case is being abused and does not apply. And I'm doing my best to present the conservative argument, since the people who posted it on the video last week are apparently too busy or too scared to call in and speak with me directly. And those of you who commented know directly who I'm speaking to. The line's toll-free and paid for a reason. If you think I'm wrong, you can call in and address me directly. This is a source, a conservative source, from overseas, from the United Kingdom. They're not Democrats, they're not liberals, they're conservatives in the United Kingdom. 26 million Americans have been at 4,700 demonstrations, and this is now dated information, all around the country. If you look, (1,360 counties in the United States, roughly 40%. So almost half the country has had some form of protest. I do not see half of the country on fire or burned down. I see a few buildings. I've seen some news footage from Fox News showing some buildings that were burned down, but I do not see 40% of the country burnt down. I don't see remotely anything close to that. Now, since conservatives typically prefer Fox News, this was published on September 16th, 4 days ago. Damage from the riots, notice the language there, they're already trying to bias you, across the United States will cost at least $1 billion. And then further down, you can already see it's been bumped up to $2 billion. Okay? I'd also like to point out right here that the stock market's going down because coronavirus is still a thing and we're not handling it very well. However, 1 billion, and then we're going to double that because we're a conservative source and we've got to get you scared of these supposed riots, sounds like a lot of money. And it would be to you or me. I can't honestly imagine having $1 billion. Much less 2 or 4, since we're just going to double things. But I'm not disagreeing that it's a lot of money for an individual or a group of people. However, when you look at it on a national scale, from 2017, if Walmart has the same amount of shoplifting as the average retailer, so Walmart, a national chain, right, in the United States, Walmart would have lost $4 billion to people walking out with milk and eggs and whatever else you can imagine. Tic Tacs, toilet paper. Yeah, remember the coronavirus toilet paper thing? Yeah. Walmart would have lost $4 billion to that a year. So even if I take the highest conservative estimate as a scare tactic, which again, I don't buy for 1 minute, but even if I took that on face value, okay, this is comparable to people shoplifting from Walmart. it's half as bad. And you're not advocating, last I checked, that people do not have constitutional rights when shopping at Walmart. I don't see what I'm missing here, guys. You have a constitutionally guaranteed right to protest. You have a constitutionally guaranteed right to assemble and petition your government to make them listen to you and to be heard. You don't have a constitutionally guaranteed right to go shopping at Walmart. Walmart loses more money annually to theft than these riots that are burning down the country have caused, by over twice as much. When's the last time you saw somebody tear gassing people in Walmart? When's the last time you saw somebody, a security guard at Walmart, beating somebody with a police baton? If you want to give away your constitutionally guaranteed rights, hey, then we have a fundamental disagreement. That's what this country was based on. Those were the first 10 amendments because they weren't explicitly stated in the Constitution that the founding fathers, it was the first 10 things the founding fathers thought were so important that they wanted to make sure that they were specifically stated. Hey guys, we left some stuff out of this document. And these 10 things are the most important things we can think of. It's not going to be an all-inclusive list. We already know that. We've told each other that. But we want to make damn sure that nobody forgets these 10 things. And again, from where I'm sitting, you guys, those that are on the conservative side that are buying all this riots and the country's burning down and Antifa is going to take over the whole political process, are worried about something that from the Fox News estimate, okay, that doubles the estimate that they got, because you can already see right here, okay,